Thank you, Mindy. I appreciate it. Okay, today's presentation is what is the hidden history of Agile? How can its secrets help you realize your potential? So Mindy already introduced me, so it's just a rehash of what she said. So thank you so much for the introduction, Mindy. Again, I have 12 years experience in Agile coaching, 20 years experience as trainer in advanced customer service and conflict resolution, 15-year student of Austrian economic theory, and 5 years experience as business innovation consultant. Knowledge of Agile. Many Agilists believe their knowledge is comprehensive. With the Scrum Guide in one hand and the Agile Manifesto in the other, coupled with scaled frameworks and other Agile techniques, many Agilists believe they are well equipped to handle most of the Agile challenges that come their way. But are they well equipped? Is their knowledge really comprehensive, or is there something missing? Are there secrets they're unaware of? Secrets hidden in the history of Agile? In order to find out, we must first take a journey into the true history of Agile.
Nobody can hear your audio, Rudy.
So the audio, can you hear the audio?
No, they can't hear the audio.
Okay, hold on,
You have
please.
to share it when you share in the bottom left corner of your share screen. You have to click the share audio.
Okay, hold on. Give me a moment.
You have to stop, either stop sharing or reshare, and it'll give you the option again.
Okay, I'm not getting, it's not allowing me to. So can you take back the controls, Mindy? Can you stop sharing? All right, so the bottom.
When you click share screen in the bottom left corner, it'll say share sound. It'll also say optimize for video clip.
All right. Now tell me if you can hear it now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
In 1871, in the European nation of Austria, Carl Menger publishes the book Principles of Economics. In the book, Menger makes the argument that the individual person is the driver of all economic activity, and that universal laws governs this economic activity. Menger called these universal laws exact laws. He argued that as long as an individual followed the exact laws of 1. Being rational, 2. Being self-interested, 3. Being informed, and 4. Being free, economic activity will occur. From these exact laws, Menger developed a theory of the entrepreneur. Next generation Austrian economists Friedrich von Wieser and Joseph Schumpeter further develop Menger's The Theory of the Entrepreneur. Von Wieser proclaimed that economic change is brought about by heroic intervention of individual men who appear as leaders toward new economic shores. Schumpeter argues that innovation and technological change come from entrepreneurs. He asserts that doing new things, or the doing of old things in a new way, stem directly from the efforts of entrepreneurs. He also argues that anyone seeking profits must innovate. In 1878, Harvard professor Charles Peirce develops the philosophy of pragmatism. Pragmatism is a philosophical approach of determining the truth of ideas. In pragmatism, you submit a hypothesis to an experimental test and then observe the results. The results of the test determines the truth of the hypothesis. Pragmatism becomes famous in America. Quality control engineer Walter Schuhart discovers pragmatism and applies the philosophy to his work. In 1919, Joseph Schumpeter meets Peter Drucker and introduces the youngster to entrepreneurial theory in Austrian economics. In 1928, W. Edward Deming is introduced to Walter Schuhart. Schuhart introduces Deming to statistical quality control and the philosophy of pragmatism. Schuhart unveils his Schuhart cycle, a quality control method that uses the continual process of specification, production, and inspection to gain knowledge and predict results. The Schuhart cycle is based on the pragmatic approach of hypothesis, test, and verify results. In 1945, Japan is defeated in World War II. They become a U.S.-occupied territory. In 1950, the U.S.-Korean War breaks out, and the U.S. government pays the Japanese government $3.5 billion to manufacture materials for the war. In 1950, the Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers invite W. Edwards Deming to come to Japan to teach an 8-day course on statistical quality control. Deming teaches an updated version of the Schuhart cycle. The updated version featured the 4 steps of plan, do, study, act. The Schuhart cycle is a learning process to predict future results. As a result of Deming's teachings, Japanese manufacturing rose by 100% in 2 years. Deming's lectures on statistical quality control are compiled and distributed for sale in Japan. Deming decides to donate his royalties from the sale to the Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers.
In appreciation of Deming's generosity, the union uses the funds to create the Deming Prize to commemorate Dr. Deming's contributions and friendship. In 1954, Peter Drucker publishes The Practice of Management. The book is widely considered the first book to organize the art and science of running an organization into an integrated body of knowledge. Drucker also introduces his management by objectives and self-control methodology. This methodology requires companies to set corporate objectives, align corporate objectives with employee objectives, and execute and measure progress against those agreed upon objectives. In 1954, the Korean War ends and Japan's wartime economy is over. As a result, Japan plunges into an economic recession. In response, the Japanese government sends inspection teams to America to learn how to close the management gap between America and Japan. The inspection team finds Drucker's The Practice of Management in the executive suite of every company they visit during the trip. This makes a big impression, and Drucker's The Practice of Management is accepted in Japanese industry. In 1957, Peter Drucker presents the paper Long Range Planning. In the article, Drucker defines corporate long-range planning as a continuous process of making entrepreneurial decisions in a changing and dynamic environment. Influenced by Peter Drucker's paper on long-range planning and his management by objective methodology, the Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers adds planning and policy to the Deming Prize checklist in 1958. The same year, Armand Feigenbaum is invited to Japan to teach cross-functional management. The Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers adds cross-functional management to the Deming Prize checklist in 1962. Former Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers member Karu Ishikawa combines the Deming cycle with Gemba-cho and creates the quality circle. Gemba-cho means the real place. In Japan, the real place is on the workshop floor. A quality circle is a small group of people that work on the workshop front line. They manage themselves while creatively using quality control ideas and techniques to carry out their activities while attempting self and mutual development. Quality circles are added to the Deming Prize checklist by the Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers in 1962. By 1965, Japanese companies have been incorporating management by objectives, long-range planning, cross-functional management, and quality circles to execute total quality control. Bridgestone Tires publishes a report analyzing the planning technique used by these companies. Bridgestone Tires names these techniques Hoshin Kanri. In 1968, Bridgestone Tires publishes their Hoshin Kanri manual and wins the Deming Prize. Fuji Xerox implements Hoshin Kanri and wins the Deming Prize in 1980. In 1982, Yakagawa Hewlett-Packard implements Hoshin Kanri and wins the Deming Prize. In 1986, the Harvard Business Review publishes the New Product Development Game by Professors Harataka Takeuchi and Jiro Nanaka. Takeuchi and Nanaka discusses companies that have taken a new holistic approach to managing the product development process. Fuji Xerox and Hewlett-Packard are among the companies that are studied. Takeuchi and Tanaka said these teams reminded them of rugby teams, particularly the Scrum formation in rugby. So they called these types of development projects Scrum Project Management. In 1993, Jeff Sutherland and his development team were reading the new product development game. Sutherland decided to implement Scrum Project Management. According to Jeff Sutherland, this was the formal birth of Scrum. Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber published the Scrum Guide in 2010. Scrum spreads quickly throughout the information technology industry and becomes the predominant agile methodology used by companies around the world. To realize additional benefits, companies are now scaling Scrum to the enterprise level. But can a development methodology work for the rest of the organization? We say it cannot. To successfully transform any organization to Agile, you must first deconstruct Hoshin Kanri and understand the methodologies hidden within. Long-range planning for senior management supplies the corporate vision, long-term objectives, and innovative corporate strategy. Cross-functional management for middle management determines internal strategy and resources. Scrum provides the framework for development teams to create new and innovative products. And finally, management by objectives pulls it all together by aligning all areas around a single vision.
Management is not only a science but also an art and a craft. I believe it is more an art, and one of the greatest artists in our field was Peter Drucker, who was able to grasp the essence of issues to build more universal theories. I served as a distinguished Drucker scholar in residence at the Drucker School at Claremont Graduate University, and I continued studying why Drucker was able to see what others could not see. The essence of business is not about bettering the competence to maximize profit. It is about relentless pursuit of the firm's own standard of excellence.
So what were the secrets revealed in the video? We learned the true origins of Scrum, but the major secret we learned was that Scrum is just one part of a larger process, a process that includes innovative and strategic management methodologies with their own distinct and separate history. Innovative and strategic management methodologies. They're methodologies born of Austrian economic theory implemented in US and Japanese companies, resulting in these companies becoming world leaders in their fields. Long-range planning, the continuous process of making entrepreneurial decisions in a changing and dynamic environment. And managing by objectives and self-control, a systematic approach in which management and staff members from all levels of the organization synchronize their individual objectives around common goals or a single vision. Now, each area of the business, senior leadership, middle management, and development, should have their own unique methodologies unique to their specific needs. So for senior leadership, it would be systematic innovation and entrepreneurial strategies. Middle management would be cross-functional management. And for development, obviously, it would be Scrum and Kanban. And each area will use these tools to contribute their portion to make the whole organization agile. So responsibilities for senior leadership provide the vision and the goals. Middle management, objectives and key results, and development to actually produce said results. And as you can see, each circle intersects. That's where the negotiation happens to ensure that there's no top-down situation. If senior management wants these goals, they have to then present them, and the middle manager has to discuss with them what these goals are and if they're able to do it. And that kind of negotiation happens at every portion of the organization. That, in essence, is managed by objectives. So this would be the complete process. Excuse me, the complete agile process. Now, it is the absence of proper innovative and strategic management methodologies that are the cause of many agile transformations not delivering on their promise. And in my opinion, the primary reason why successes for modern scaled agile solutions are few and far between. Postscript. It was a recession of 1954 that compelled Japan to seek out assistance on how to properly manage their businesses. It was the innovative and strategic management methodologies of Peter Drucker that not only helped Japan manage business, but catapulted them to world leadership. We are currently in the midst of a worldwide recession. Companies that can innovate quickly during difficult economic times will have a strategic advantage over its competition. And I'm gonna stop sharing. Any questions? Comments, questions?
Feel free to unmute and ask your questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm a strong follower of PDCA, PDSA, and I also, based on working with a global company, had some other influences relating to iterative incremental development.
Yes.
In your history, I don't see much extra references to that.
Iterative and incremental development.
Right.
Okay, so PSDA is the plan, PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, right? Of Deming, correct?
Yeah, I understand that. It's just there's a big jump in your history from that to more recent Scrum, where there could have been additional steps in between.
I see what you're saying. It's actually the Plan, Do, Check Act. Right. Anyway, I did not concentrate much on that because from that portion, and then Ishikawa, he moved into a more technical area, and it was brought to America, and I forget the name of it, but where individuals received their black belts in that area, that's where it goes off to. And I want to stay on the journey away from that onto how we get to where we are today. So that's a whole like detour where it is today, where I forget it slips my mind. I forget the discipline, but people receive their black belts and things of that nature and all that. But that's more of a technical thing. And Agile is less technical than that. So that's why I moved in that direction. But you're correct. There was, from 1962 until Scrum, there was a chasm.
I also have a question. question.
Sure.
I'm of the opinion, and I enjoyed your presentation in the history. Put that out there first and foremost.
Thank you.
And I agree with you that there's a lot that came before. A lot of it goes back to Deming and Drucker and even further back. But interestingly enough, I'm of the opinion that in modern Agile frameworks, one area that is left out, although some frameworks do pay a little lip service to it, such as SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, is the importance of lean in Agile. What are your thoughts on that?
The original presentation was a half hour and included the history of lean and how Drucker affected Toyota, how Ono kind of brought in Kanban, but I think lean deserves its own separate concentration. So instead of trying to add that on, I just made this strictly Agile, and then lean would be separate. But I trace back to when they were a sewing machine company and they wanted to do cars, and they changed the D to the T to make it Toyota. So I follow that. I consider lean and Agile separate disciplines. I think they need their separate attention.
Fair enough. Thanks for that.
So usually, this is my second time presenting, and what I try to do is present as controversial topics as possible to get the conversation going, because I know there's intelligent people on the line. So I will add that I think the missing piece to all frameworks is the business innovation and entrepreneur piece, because business leads their leadership leads their organizations into these areas, and innovation is a critical component. In most organizations, I would say almost all organizations, they don't cover that. Therefore, they're walking into a dynamic environment ill-prepared. Anyone have any opinion on that?
I would tend to agree with you on that. It is, that entrepreneurial mind is what's going to spur innovation. And in the context of in software development, for instance, or any kind of product development, innovation. I think one thing that does sometimes get missed in today's world, they talk about we need to innovate. And I would argue you need to innovate your process in order for innovation to actually occur, because that innovation really comes from the bottom up. And what's innovative from a management perspective, at least to my mind, is creating that environment where the innovation can occur.
And I believe that is the modern understanding. I've studied Austrian economics before I even knew what Agile was. So my background is more economics, heavy into entrepreneurship and innovation, the study of that. From an economic perspective, innovation happens before the company does anything, before development does anything. Innovation is really a business practice, an economic practice. And leaders need to understand that they need to find the proper opportunities in which to innovate in. And innovation is the ability to bring value to, I wouldn't say the customers, to the market. These may be customers you don't even have yet, but there's a need. And because there's a need, you create, without even interviewing anyone, you create what is needed. The customers will come to you. So there's a process, and I do training. There is a systematic, repeatable process that business leaders can use to innovate. And there's a process for all levels of business. There's a process that systematically allows you to innovate leaders have their companies innovate and be ahead of other companies repeatedly. Now, there are companies that know that. These companies have been around for over 100 years, and there are companies that don't know that. That's why we don't know about them anymore. But innovation really starts, that's why it's called entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs don't know how to develop. They know how to come up with the ideas, services and or products or strategies that will create new markets. That is a business leader's responsibility, and that's what companies need to innovate. What developers do is they're creative. They don't innovate, because innovate is an economic methodology. In other words, to innovate is to create something that is valuable to your end user. So that's really responsibility of business leaders. They have to understand what is valuable to my current or potential end user. Then they inform the rest of the organization, and then the organization rallies around them in an agile fashion to deliver that as quickly as possible. And I think that's the portion that's missing in all our frameworks, that economic innovative training for senior leadership to lead organizations into dynamic environments we're about to enter in the next year or two.
Any more questions?
I'd like to add a comment. I
Right
also
ahead.
agree innovation's
Sure.
a big factor in this. I've included a Harvard Business Review article about innovation and Agile.
Okay, secret history of agile innovation. Okay, I see that. Thank you.
And Jeff Sutherland was one of the authors of that article.
Who was one of the authors? I'm sorry.
One of the authors was Jeff Sutherland.
Oh, okay. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Anything about the video that was unexpected, maybe? Anything that you would like to get further information on, because it may or may not be new to you?
Rudy, this is Dennis Mitchell here.
How are you?
Unfortunately, I came in late. But speaking from an entrepreneurial perspective, working with my clients, I see innovation not so much as being creating something new, but
Correct.
working with what exists and sort of like tweaking things, doing things differently with what you have. That said, the challenge I have seen within organizations is that even though, and I think it was James who spoke about the bottom-up approach, is that you may have the persons at the bottom up who may be willing to be innovative, but very often there is a challenge for those who are in leadership and those who are accustomed doing things a particular way to change. That has been my experience working within organizations. And even though you may try different approaches to show them what needs to be done, and I'm saying this based on a conversation I've had to deal with an entrepreneur himself. And my question is, how do you overcome such challenges where the issues lie not so much in the bottom rung of the organization, but at the at the top echelon of the organization? How do you deal with that?
Is to redefine what innovation actually is. Developers and developer teams do not innovate. Innovate is an economic science. What they do is create new things. Innovation is create new things with value. Developers are not in position to know if what they're creating has value in the marketplace. Only business leaders know that. So they can go to developers and say, innovate. Developers can't innovate. Only entrepreneurs and business leaders innovate. And what you said was true. When you say take something that exists, and give it a new value, that's an entrepreneurial strategy. And it's a subset of innovation. So in the video, I quoted Schumpeter is saying, creating new things or using old things in a new way. And that's what you're talking about, old things in a new way. That's the subset of innovation is entrepreneurial strategy. You have a new strategy for something old, and now you put a new use to it, and people think, hey, this is fantastic. So it's not always creating something new. But the fact you create something new is just an invention. The fact you create something new that's valuable is an innovation. And business are the only ones in position to do that. They have no training. They want to do it, they just don't know how. There's a training that I offer and a systematic, repeatable way that an organization can be innovative. They follow, and it's 7 different areas that you look for innovative opportunities. You use entrepreneurial strategies, and you will innovate each time. And it has little to nothing to do with your developers. What your developers do is say, okay, what do you want me to make? What is it that will be valuable? Because you've already made that decision, senior leader. So now you tell me, I'll produce it, give it to you, you bring it to the marketplace. So what senior leadership, I think, is missing is the responsibility is not on the developers, the responsibility is on them, which means they need training in innovation, systematic innovation and entrepreneurial strategies. That is a business leader's responsibility because they have to lead their company into the future. The developers can't lead you into the future. They're looking for senior leadership to lead them. So that's, I think, what's missing. So the great job developers do, I think they do more than a great job, but it's not their responsibility, nor are they in position to lead a company into the future.
You do have a question in the chat box.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for the question. Now, me personally, I can't speak too much on safes, only because I think safes is a heavy process, and I see development tools such as portions of Scrum and portions of Kanban being used on management levels. Those, in my opinion, should not be. And based on the history I just showed, should not be. They should be restricted to where they belong for the developers, because those are developer tools. For middle management and senior management, they have their own tools they need to use to be effective. In fact, the entire organization needs to catch up to development. Development has the right tools, they have experience. Managers, middle managers and senior managers do not have the right tools. What they do, they say, maybe I can use Scrum and Kanban for what I want to do. And then nothing really goes correctly. So I don't think senior managers have the training or the knowledge. Very few people actually have the training or knowledge of how to actually innovate, especially when the market changes on you. And it's not the market changing, it is, how can I innovate where I can change the market? I'm such a leader that I will change the market and people will follow me. Managers do not have that training. They do not have that insight, they don't have that understanding, but there is training available to actually break them into the lead. And in the video, it showed Peter Drucker, based on his understanding of Austrian economic theory and the theory of entrepreneurship, had developed that. And I have studied that. And these are the ways that these companies can move ahead. So I don't use SAFEs because it seems heavy to me. But when I look at the SAFEs graphic, I see portions of development methodologies in middle and senior management areas, which is the wrong tools for those areas to be effective.
Here, here.
Well, I'm happy you said it. So thank you so much, James. I think it's not the downside. What brought us to this point of success are developers and engineers. So kudos to them. What will take us over the finish line and get the roses and first prize. Now, business and economic people need to take over because we're really working in a world of competition, of limited resources, of high competition, and there only can be one winner, right? You have people coming in second, coming in third. If you're not first, second, or third, you're a loser because there's no market left for you. So that takes a business, entrepreneurial, innovative mind. And though the leaders we have now don't have that through no fault of their own, but they don't have that, and that's what's needed. So our scaled frameworks, as long as they're missing that, companies will struggle to reach their desired results because they're missing pieces. And no matter how much Scrum and how many teams you spin up, and even if some companies they do OKRs now, which is really good because I included that, so they do objectives and key results. Leadership is the weak link. They do not have the tools, they do not have the knowledge, and they don't have the understanding of what they need to do to lead these organizations. So the organization can take advantage of that agile position. How I can change, I can adapt. Just give us the leadership. You're going to change and adapt based on the market. You have new innovative ideas depending on what the market is, or you can see opportunity, you'll take advantage. Our organization is no longer stiff. We're agile. We can change with you. But senior leadership is not doing that. So they're kind of agile, but they're kind of agile, like looking around going, what should we do next? I don't know. Senior leadership said work on this project, so we'll just do it. There's no market penetration. There is no market making. They are not leading their organizations effectively and competitively. And in that environment, one organization can just run the table on everyone if they're innovative, because everyone else will catch everybody else standing still. Just takes one organization to run it. Everyone else to go, wow, how did they do that? How did they know that that's an opportunity? How could they see that opportunity and no one else could see it? That's what being innovative is about.
Any more questions or comments?
This
Well, I
is
guess presentation.
just, Rudy, this is just a comment, and not to belabor a point. It's how do you change mindsets? To me, that is a challenge. You know, I mean, you could provide the best of arguments, the best of to change the situation, but when people are so dogmatic about not changing,
right?
I think that is, you know, a calamity, and that in itself is a frustration that, you know, many people, many entrepreneurs face.
Yeah, the only technique, because I think in my bio we mentioned that conflict resolution and advanced customer service is something I did for quite a long period of time. As a coach, you run into people who will just draw a line in the sand. I never argue with them. What I do is I say it's fine, and then when I lay out its unintended consequences that's coming their way. And if they're fine with it, I'm fine. It gets them to think like, oh my God. So people are very narrow in what they're trying to do. They don't look at the effects of what they do. The job as you or as a coach is to look at the ramifications on unintended consequences of what they do, because their job might be such that they have to concentrate on a small area. Your job as a coach is to say, I have to concentrate on the bigger ramifications of decisions that you make. And what you do is inform them that yes, whatever you say that will happen, more than likely will happen. But what you're not looking at, this also will happen. And that that unexpected consequence can be greater than the benefit that they're getting. Once an individual can see or do what I call a cost benefit analysis and going, man, the cost is too high for that benefit, they will on their own go, well, let's think of something else. The analogy I use is I'm a waiter, people order anything they want, that's fine. Then I show them the bill ahead of time. I don't tell them not to order, I just give them the bill. They determine, they then say, let me pare down this order a little bit. This is kind of expensive. And I walk away. So it is to lay out all the information they need to make an informed decision and let that person make that decision. And if you can show that the things they want to get in the long run they cannot get with this decision, they will then think about it. And on their own, and of course to save face, on their own, they come up with a way to go get around that. That way you don't have to you don't have to be the smart one that made them look bad. You don't have to you allow them to come up with the solution themselves. And anyone come up with their own solution will follow their solution. If you come up with a solution, they may or may not follow. That's a technique that's worked for me for quite some time. Just give smart people good information, they'll tend to make good decisions. Never argue with them. Tell them, hey, because from their perspective, they're right. Their perspective is just too limited. It's just too limited. So you expand it for them, sit back, and you can almost see them thinking. You can see them starting to, okay, I didn't consider that.
Yes.
And just give them time.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so like I said, each time I come up here, I try to make my presentations as controversial as possible so we can get questions going. But okay, we have another question. So what tools will you say are effective in forecasting the downsides of their bad decisions while trying to change their mindset? A coach, and I'm saying this, I'm assuming we're all agile coaches. A coach, again, has to assume that the individuals that you're dealing with have different incentives than yours. Most people have their own individual incentives. Those incentives will lock them into a certain way of seeing things, put them in a certain context. A coach's job is to consider all contexts. The coach does not have the luxury to have their own context. They have to actually consider everybody's context. That's the coach's job. So in doing that, you can see things from each individual's perspective. At least you try to see it from their perspective. Once you can do that, you can be empathetic to what they want because you understand what they want. But your job is to do what? Bring them to where they need to be, not where they want to be. And where they need to be is give them additional information by you standing back and saying, okay, if he does X, that leads to Y, and Y needs to Z, and Z may not be so good. You have to explain to them, you understand, but they're not going to go past X. It's your job to go past X, Y, Z, and present it to them, right? I had to do this training when I was my former career as a human resource manager and trainer, and my clients were most of the major buildings in Midtown Manhattan. My client was in Midtown Manhattan. And I had to train entire groups of individuals on how do you deal with irate customers. And I told them, you have to be selfless. You have to put yourself in their shoes immediately and see exactly what is bothering them. Once you get that empathy, they're on your side. If you argue with them, there's a wall, they're never on your side. You have to empathize with them first to get them on your side. And even if you don't have a solution, they'll listen to you because at least you listen to them. You empathize with them and you understood. But as a coach, if you can empathize with them and have a solution, those two things put together works. It's always worked for me. I've had people say, I hate Agile. I'm like, yeah, it's not the greatest thing in the world. They expect me to defend it. I'm like, it's not perfect. It's not magic. All of a sudden they put their guard down. Yeah, and they start complaining. I'm like, yeah, in that situation, you're probably right. And then all of a sudden they want to listen to what I had to say. And next thing I know, they're on my side. They're pushing Agile with me because I understood, at least I took the time to understand or listen to what they had to say, and I wasn't being combative. So the one thing is never be combative, always look at it from their perspective. Once you're on their side, I mean, you're in the door. You're not knocking on the door on the outside locked. You're in the door with them. So their home is open to you. So at that point, you have free reign. They'll listen to you. They'll take what you have to say under advisement. And if you have quality information to give them, they'll take that quality information. I've been in plenty of situations where people say, I don't know what to do with that guy. Send them to Rudy. They sent them to me and I had no choice. I had to figure it out. And I always figured it out. It was my job to do so.